Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 6 of the Wayward Blackwomen podcast with Alicia Gray. I am Alicia Gray, or AM Gray if you like. And today I'd like to discuss an important topic: Black women. And the title of this podcast is Black Women Are Not All Right. You know, normally when we discuss being all right and checking in on someone, we're talking about the kids, as in the kids are not all right. However, what I found is many Black women are never given any type of consideration regarding how they feel, and if they indeed as well may not be all right. We find this consistently in areas of the medical field, where there's a problem with consistent cultural incompetence from the physicians. I myself may have to go to 2 to 3 doctors, and I'm not speaking in a referral manner for a specialist. I'm speaking in the manner of just to get a second and third opinion about a condition that I believe to be prominent, that other doctors may either dismiss, give a half-based diagnosis in reference to, or simply, prescribe a medicine that may or may not be something that works. Now, being from the South as I am, many times these doctors are arrogant. Sometimes they purposely know what's wrong with you, and I've discussed this with my lupus and MCTD, mixed connected tissue disease, where it took years to get a diagnosis, where it was quite obvious once I was diagnosed what it was. And if I had tackled it earlier from the numerous doctors I had gone to, numerous, I could say 6 to 10 doctors. And some of them openly chuckled in my face. Like, you're kidding me, you don't know what's wrong with you. And at the time, I didn't know I had lupus. I know that I've mentioned to several, my fingertips were turning blue, but to no avail. They could not have just done a basic blood test to check my T4 levels and so forth and so on. I had to specifically go in and ask for, and I did this on my own because I got tired of, what was going on here. And I said, something's wrong. I'm going to go in. I don't eat things in order to give me high blood pressure. I'm very conscious of that fact. I eat very little salt. I eat very little sugar. I don't have diabetes. But I'm going to go in to see maybe if something else is wrong. Maybe it is lupus, an offbeat chance. And I went to the doctor, just a regular. She wasn't even an actual medical doctor. She was actually a physician assistant at the local urgent care. But they also did appointments because the area I was in North Carolina, you couldn't get an appointment for 2 to 3 months even to see a regular doctor. This is how bad the American system of healthcare is. And I just think this woman was like, okay, here you go. Here's your test. Yeah, it looks like at the bottom it says you are most likely going to have lupus. It said so right on the blood test. So it wasn't like, unless she marked it out or something, I could have missed it. And that's how I found out what was wrong with me after over 10 years. So I use that as an example of what being not only a Black woman, but an African American woman in the United States is like. and how we're not all right, not physically now because of the cultural incompetence that we've had to endure. And, you know, sometimes not even mentally. Not saying we have mental health issues, but it's contributing to the problems that we're having that are giving us anxiety. Now, back to the physical, just quickly, portion of this, we could not forget the maternal mortality rate and how it's, connected to the whole incompetence situation. Doesn't matter what income you have, doesn't matter where you live, specifically African American women are having children that are dying in the womb faster than other women. We're losing children when we're in the operating room, and nobody knows why. High levels of stress, perhaps something the doctor should be exploring a little further. I mean, it's a very well-known problem that we're having, and no one seems to really give a damn, honestly, besides the people in public health, because of the fact that we're African American women. Now, when we're speaking of components which might be contributing, like stress and, do harm from racism and things of that nature, that's automatic, right? So that means we're actually internalizing those things as Black women without realizing it. And this is important because this comes to the next point here of why we're not all right. Black women are not all right. I've seen so much internalization of racism, so much denial, so much insecurity, not only regarding racism, but all of its sister components, bigotry, prejudice, and everything under the sun. We'll get into intersectional racism later, where the sexism also is taking a toll on us. But have you seen any of us speak up about this? When I see African American women, they tend to do this "for my man," quote unquote, spiel. And that's what we see in the press and the media, or we get the opposite, which is what I'm calling the overseas mimicry and shadowing of African American culture. I have noticed that many of these women that are on the newscasts, and I have nothing against immigrant women, Black and or other, but they are not African American women. They are prominent Black immigrant people, reporters, musicians, singers, whatever, that have been thrust into the spotlight, who have been able to achieve twice as much as African American people with much less effort. And you would find that in descendants of people from the Caribbean, from Haiti, from Africa, from England, a big, Joy Reid's, the other newscasters, or some are from Canada. This is not about colorism, because we have both light and dark skinned people here. The recent Cynthia Erivo Wicked, splash, I would call it a advertising splash, where they had her all over the news in one aspect or another during an American election, where the most vulnerable people are going to be African American women. In this country, with Donald Trump, we are the most vulnerable, and you advertise this Black woman getting discriminated against in England, which, England is known for being bigots anyway. Excuse me. Wow, big shocker, because she was in a movie poster and they darkened her face. Now, the problem with, this situation is They know about the colonialism and the problems with bigotry because they participate in it. And many times they don't like African American women, such as Cynthia Erivo and her previous comments regarding African American women. She's perfectly, or African American people in general, but she's perfectly fine with going on a broadcast and speaking with, white people, European people, anyone but us. She never praises us. It's always the corny Aretha thing, which is primarily a European thing because we don't do that here. And, it's more of a, as long as they like me, who cares about you? Because I'm going to get where I'm going, irregardless of what you think about me. And you will see these people consistently be thrown into the spotlight. They're the ones that are encouraging you to believe there's no problems. The Joy Reids, that black people, are you crazy? Be liberal. There's no problems. Because perhaps in their communities, they didn't see these problems. As long as they ate chicken, went to church, kissed white behind, let's just put it on the table and say it like it is. They did the butt kissing, and all of the things they needed to do to white society to get where they are. And they're not going to mess up their paychecks. They don't give a darn about African American women. The African American women specifically are not all right. Now we can see I've went through several different types of black women here. In general, none of these things are right. So none of us are all right. Just based upon this alone, because we don't have solidarity. Because certain segments of our community, and I'm going to say our community, I'm not going to say just because they're black, they're part of our community, but I'm saying because they oftentimes will pivot towards the black community when they feel like they can absorb some of the fandom from it, right? They'll appeal to us, the Kamala cooking greens in the tub, the pandering. So let's say a spectrum of our community is not all right. Because we were taught to always be at the bottom of the barrel and to just ignore when we have our own problems. And this is something that we need to talk about. Everyone else feels that they're superior to us because of several different reasons. The next reason is the key as to why we feel so vulnerable, while we are vulnerable, and we continue to be pushed to the bottom of the barrel. I mean, it's very simple. The black men were objectified during slavery, during the civil rights movement, and, they feel like they're not equivalent to white males. So they decide they want to, when it's convenient, take the side of white male masculinity. And that leaves us vulnerable, whether you're married, unmarried, or whatever. It's worse when you're unmarried, because then you're almost as if you're in one of those movies and the elite are chasing you down, trying to hunt you for prey, because you have no one in your corner. All they see, and when I say they, I mean white women, white men, and anyone who feels like one of these people who were poor in their country or came from a country that didn't do well, sees an opportunity to do well in normalizing themselves in another type of country and society and want to step all over you. They see a vulnerable individual that does not have a source of something to stand on, like any type of familial tree or anything that's going to keep them stable. I want black women, in particular African American women, to realize something. And I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. People who are white supremacists or white supremacist adjacent, they are going to know when you are insecure about yourself. If you're not insecure, they're going to try to make you insecure in some way. They're going to find a vulnerability. You saw this with Donald Trump. This has always been the case with white supremacists. They are going to find a loophole, and they do it on purpose because that is their weapon. So if you are vulnerable, and it's always been this way, I'm from Virginia, we used to pass laws constantly to get rid of those loopholes because we knew that white supremacists would use them as weapons. Common sense. Every time they saw a loophole, they'd try to come up with something, they'd make it up, and we shoot it back down with another law. And finally, they got mad and left. They left for like 20 or 30 years, and now they're back. You know why? Because they know that you aren't paying attention to the damn loopholes. You aren't paying attention to your own vulnerabilities, and you keep denying them. Being married isn't going to help you through this. They still see black men as weaker than white men, or they see them as malleable, able to be used, able to be manipulated. We saw this in the election where they tried to use them against Kamala Harris. That election was not about black men. No one cared about their vote. I don't mean to be rude, but I told you from the beginning, this was about white women. We saw this at the first Donald Trump election. Why wouldn't we see it again? They're going to be the deciding vote because they can switch between Democrat and Republican anytime they choose. They have the large amount of votes outside of the black women voting. And supposedly all the black women voted for Kamala Harris. And I doubt that because many black women voted for the couch. And the reason why is because they don't agree with women of any color that don't support other black women. I think that that's another point that Kamala Harris wanted to support women's rights, quote unquote, with the abortion, but didn't want to support black women's rights specifically with abortion and how it pertains to us, which left it open for black men to pretend and D.L. Hughley to play clown as he always does, coon, and, openly getting paid to pander and decide that this was about something that his masculinity, which everyone knows what on the DL means, I'm not going to go through that again, pertained to. This is not about his masculinity. It wasn't. Not about male masculinity. It had nothing to do with black men against Kamala. They made that argument up. You see how people are telling you who you are instead of you defining who you are as a person. That was a false argument to distract you from the real problem. The real problem is black men don't have any power, and the only power that black women have is to vote. And they're still voting with white liberalism, even if white liberalism is harming them. And this is something that we need to stop. This is the Cynthia Rivos. This is the Joy Reeves. This is the all the other reporters I've seen who come up who are women from other areas, and are claiming other countries and so forth that they do better. It's not that they do better. It's that they had more opportunities and they were pushed through. Okay, I'm not sure who this other one is. She's a light-skinned, chubby one. She started with the small newscast, and she used to barely be able to speak, a Sindor or whatever. And now she's on this, upward spiral. And she's on the, top newscast now. She could barely speak for years. I mean, that's how she sounded. And I used to be like, how did you get this job? I know people in the black community, African-American community specifically, that work their butts off, that are orators that go around the country doing things, and they don't make half as much as this woman. Who do you know? It's obvious when they are descendants of immigrants what they're doing. And I don't have a beef. I'm just telling you, because it was never something where I had a dog in that fight. But when I start seeing things such as this, where they push an agenda, it's disturbing to me. Especially when they don't like African American people. They're perceiving us as being mutts or uneducated or lazy because we're sitting here fighting their civil rights battles. So one thing I can say is I'm proud of the black folk that did not go out there and vote for Kamala Harris, because You're the lapdogs now. This is what you're good for. The good Negroes. So when something goes wrong, those good Negroes will definitely be in our corner. This is, Mr. Lindner in A Raisin in the Sun. When he came to tell those people not to live in good white folks' neighborhood and dirty it up, and he was going to pay them to do it. This is the Democratic Party. Now, come on now. You know we're all good Christians. That stuff needs to stop. Stop the good Christian fellowship. You need to wake up as Black women. I'm always here sounding the alarm. I'm always first because basically I'm going through the same things that many other women are going through. I'm no different. Why wouldn't I? Even if I weren't an activist, why wouldn't I say something? But I can see it clearly, and I've seen it for years, and it's getting worse. You cannot keep being in denial. I don't really believe that Donald Trump cares that much about Black women. I don't think he cares at all about Black women. But I do think that it's harmful, the fact that he doesn't care, because it's due harm. You have certain issues that have to be taken care of. I mean, he may just dismiss it like whatever, do and sign something and be like, get out of my face. And it might end up it being incremental and helpful to Black women incidentally because he doesn't care. I don't want to see any more poverty boxes as, welfare or what do they call it? SNAP payments or anything like that. Because it implies that you're also unintelligent because you have less income. And you can't pick your own food or make your own choices. And that's not okay with me. Now, you see how the migrants got all that money. This was a thumb, to your nose or a finger in your face. But they got to do whatever they wanted with all that money. And then he's going to come in and do the reactionary thing and make it so that you have poverty boxes like we're going through war outside of your door and we're rationing because now we can't afford anything. It's like having a bad twin or a bad sister or sibling or something who went out. And I know this because this actually happened to me, who did everything wrong, and then you got the blame for it. And you were like, I didn't have anything to do with any of that. Well, guess what? Who cares? Because when it comes down to it and that hammer comes down, and I hate to use that analogy because my mom was abused by her ex-husband and he hit her with a hammer in the head because he was an alcoholic. That's just a side note, but I digress. I don't know, just when I said that analogy, I was like, I shouldn't have said it. We are not responsible for what our parents have done in the past, but I'm just saying, when that happens and the ish hits the fan, understand Black women, especially African American women, are going to be the most affected. And I cannot tell you enough. I knew that to regulate immigration, just to regulate it, it still was going to affect the African American community in a negative way because they see us as nothing more than freeloaders in our own country. Not only did they kidnap us and make us be here, they tortured us while we were here, gave us lesser than everyone else. We were slaves. We were fighting through the civil rights movement. We were fighting for independence as women. We're fighting all our lives. We're taking care of our families by ourselves primarily now, not only because of all the things that have happened to Black men, but because of the fact that we're still fighting poverty because we don't have the same resources as other races. And we need to start understanding that. We need to start believing that. We need to start addressing that. I think that honestly, we're in denial. And it's a shock to people's systems when Donald Trump got in office and they have to face it. And a lot of people still can't face it. They don't want to face it, white, Black, or other. And you will see all the people that are actually out here crying, whining, all this stuff are white women. And yes, abortion is a big issue. But also, they still ignore you. And some of you are still trying to hold on to male patriarchy. Why? Male patriarchy did nothing but hurt African American women, specifically. And when we go other places and we start traveling, as I started to do just a little bit, we're going to see patriarchy is still in full effect. And a lot of these women don't have rights. You can't even find hair care products for women over here in Asia that much. Now, yes, they have a problem with understanding African American women. That's a totally different subject. And I think their education levels, especially sometimes where there's Islam, especially, is very low. You're going to have women that, still go out here and do everything that men do and still think it's okay for men to treat them badly, right? And we saw this in Africa where they still beat women. This is not something at this point, I believe, in any country they should be doing. I think they should be aware of the fact that women have excelled and that Black women are not going to be the type, specifically African American women, to take a lot of bull off of people, but they're still piggybacking off of white male patriarchy, colonialism, and so forth and so on. And the men aren't educated either. So it's sort of like 1970s America in many parts of Asia, which is quite disturbing. And I'm quite sure in certain parts of Africa it's like that. So we have to do double the work when we're overseas. Some people can ignore it, and some Black women do well here and in other places. I think that I perhaps am hypersensitive because I am so smart and I do understand way more than the average person. Excuse me. So therefore, I analyze in my mind so much without really partaking in a response to some people. And because I don't say anything and they don't understand my level of intellect, they're going to misinterpret what I'm saying. That's all right, because I'm not going to be the type to really care one way or the other, but it is, somewhat disturbing, the reaction that I'm getting. So, as I've said, we're going to move on to intersectional harassment and things that are both racist and sexist that are happening in the Black community that we're ignoring. What I'm finding is white men, again, are stepping up and pretending like they don't see the racism they have towards African American women, especially when it comes to sexism. They're going to treat us like we're the white women of the world, and we went on that cruise like in a Raisin in the Sun. I always knew I want no rich white women, right? But now all of a sudden, when it's convenient again, we are. Now, these are remnants of 1980, whatever, for me when I was a child, because all this has happened before, where they would speak to Black women negatively as we passed. They'd catcall us as white men, shocking things. Because if you don't change things, don't change the laws, don't speak up, they're going to continue to do it. And this is what has happened. The denial, the pretending. As long as I have money, some money in my pocket, I can, ignore them and that racism. As long as I can go to work with them or go to school with them, they're not going to be racist towards me. The denial. You see where that denial has gotten you, right? And she's the equivalent of my wife because I'm in an unhappy relationship. As a single Black woman, I can go and try to sexually assault her, stalk her, using my psychological understanding of the way I wish that it were. Obviously, a Freudian, defense mechanism in someone with mental health issues. But we're seeing that on the rise with white men, because why wouldn't they take advantage of Black women? It is specific with African American women that we did not have those advantages that white women had, that we are known to be the heads of households, that we are known to not be married, because they want to attack us to get that self-esteem level where they want it. They can always attack our income and say we didn't do as well as they did and try to find those vulnerable. What did I tell you? That vulnerability those who are perceived to have low self-esteem. They want someone to make them feel better about themselves. And they will do and attack anyone that they can find that they feel like fits that description. Now, if you don't fit that description and they're totally off their rocker, they're never going to sit down here and get caught, because you're going to have to find another white male that's going to be willing to lock up someone who's literally finding someone who they feel like they can victimize. And that's going to put him in a vulnerable position, or her, as a white woman. And that's when you're going to see the racism. Now, if you're overseas like I am right now, you see quite a bit of this indifference towards Black women, African American women. I'm quite sure they know that we're independent, and they don't like that because it makes the men feel vulnerable, and because some of these women are jealous of African American women. So if you have any sort of vulnerability, they tend to act like 1980s white women, or they'll perceive you as having a vulnerability that we no longer have. You know, like the waving of the long hair, your hair is not as long as mine, sort of white woman nonsense. We always thought that was just white women, right? And we thought they were stupid then. You know, the don't touch my braids mentality. Well, they're still doing it because in many areas of the world, they have not caught up with the rest of reality. You know, we are not allowed to say these people literally have chiggers and lice and everything. I thought that was a stereotype too from the 80s. And a lot of times the Black kids used to do stuff like that. And I used to be like, don't do that, because that's rude and it's disrespectful as a stereotype. But unfortunately, there are people still honestly like that in both Asia and in America, primarily in the white community. And when you don't have access necessarily to dryers and things of that nature all the time, then your clothes are going to smell, you know, a certain type of way. Sometimes they have softeners and stuff now that cover that stuff up. But in Asian countries, if you don't have access to those things, then some of those things might actually be true. And, you know, that's just the truth. And I think some of these people believe they're in an episode of Crazy Rich Asians or something. I don't know. But we don't see those stereotypes too much in the U.S. But unfortunately, when that movie came out, I was like, wow, that's really weird, you know, because I have Asian friends, and if they did act like that, they did that at home, especially not around Black folk. But apparently they do act like that. So, yeah, I'd be lying if I said they didn't. But we all know when people are in specific demographics, primarily their own, and this goes for everyone, they become more arrogant, and they become, you know what I mean, more disposition to believe they can do whatever the hell they want. And this is wherever you go all over the world. So please don't believe that it's just Asia, but it's definitely happening here. So just to let you know. But back to the point. When we're dealing with intersectional harassment with Black women, that is a serious topic that we still have not explored thoroughly. It's something that's going to creep up more with Donald Trump, and you see him hiring all these white women for his cabinet. We expected it. He said he was going to hire more women. Yeah, more white women. It would be nice if he hired a qualified Black woman. I'd be in shock, but it'd be nice. And we'll see more about what happens there. But again, Black women are in denial. This is not happening. I can just keep pretending like I'm a white liberal person that actually screwed me over, and this is going to make it go away. And it's not going to make it go away. It's going to screw you further, because these men are predatory around the globe, and we need to stop this. This is something where white supremacy is combining white supremacist male patriarchy. We are not dealing with something we don't know about. Those who are fairly well educated, stop denying it. So the last point here that I wanted to make, dealing with what I posted last week, Black women living in their cars. We have a large number of Black women that are being pushed out of their homes, whether they own or rent, by both BlackRock who owns the homes, the majority of the homes in the U.S., look it up, majority shareholder, or Blackstone, who's buying up most of the rental properties. They're even pushing people out of mobile homes because they have certain groups. And even though I can't right now definitively say they are working with Blackstone, but they have specific mobile home groups that are buying up mobile home properties and jacking up the prices. This is important. I don't care if you're a homeowner now. I don't care if you're renting now. It is important that you understand, yes, we need to get these prices down in the grocery stores, the gas prices, and so forth and so on, that your friend Joe Biden and Kamala Harris let go through the roof. But we need to stop corruption. The ones that are not saying anything are the Black women, because we don't have a voice. It is ridiculous if you cannot find an affordable home. I mean, literally, you can go to a bad neighborhood, one of the worst neighborhoods in your entire state. Try this out, and you can't get an apartment, a one-bedroom for under $1,000. Try this out where you live. You might live in, an area that hasn't been hit that hard, but without going out to the rural areas and being in the middle of nowhere, I think that's ridiculous, especially when many Americans don't get paid but between $8 and $14 an hour. $14 an hour is good in the U.S., but it still doesn't cover enough for you to pay your rent at $1,000 a month and eat and pay your light bill. Trust me, in the 90s, I was making that much, and it wasn't that much then. And I was a single mom, yes, but I had a car, yes, and I was going back and forth to work all the time, but it was still a struggle. I did have childcare, yes. And no, I wasn't getting assistance. Not at that time. So I was like, working overtime, trying my best, and still had a car that needed to be repaired and got stuck. Still had to pay, all these bills, electric. If the electric went up, I was nervous. If, something else happened, another payment went through for car insurance that was too high. So I'm telling you, this is 1995, because I've been on my own since I was 18. I had my daughter out on my own. I was 18 because my mother's none too nice, as many people know. Didn't really have a choice there, even if I went to college or not. But I think that the problem was she wanted me to go to her college that she wanted to go so she could look good. That she never finished when I was younger. And she had already put my application in when I didn't want to go to that school because I didn't want to be ducking bullets. I'm not going to mention their name, but it was Norfolk State. And we had a disagreement about it because I was accepted at several colleges and I wanted to go to one of my choice that was still very reasonable, but I was 17 and she wouldn't sign the financial aid paperwork, literally. I had 2 weeks, and so therefore I missed out on an opportunity to get out of the home and support myself. I had to instead go to work. Many people wonder what happened. Not everyone has the same opportunities as everyone else. And it's not because she was a single mom. It was because she was a selfish person. So moving past that, when I was working, I went back to school later after my kids were older and had the opportunity to do so. But I had to pay bills in between, and it was not easy. Yes, I was by myself. I've always been by myself, and it's never been easy. So when I see these women out here who are younger than I am, some are my age, and they've been working their whole lives, put themselves through school, and they did all the right things, and now they're sitting here vulnerable because of things they can't control. And they're not in denial. They're on YouTube. They're telling their stories. And I appreciate that. I want other people, though, to appreciate that. It's not an easy economy for Black women. I don't care if they're working their butts off. I don't care if they're your co-workers. It's not easy for them. I'm not saying it's all Black women, but it's a lot of us. A lot of us are, in one way or the other, making a decision whether they're trying to raise our rents, whether they're adding, some interest to our mortgage, whether they're just harassing us in general to move, are sounding the alarm. Excuse me, sounding the alarm. My voice there is going, which is telling me I need to kind of go ahead and push through this a little bit faster to get this done. But I just wanted to re-emphasize that point, that this is not a novel thing where Black women are being ignored and told there's nothing wrong with you. This is the ultimate in gaslighting, where they're telling us, get over it. I don't see you. There's nothing wrong with you. Find a way. We always find a way. And I find this to be nothing less than a crime. I don't know if speaking on this is going to incur backlash, because what often happens, especially from Black men and from other people who internalize their oppression, is they'll blame Black women for their own problems. Oh, you did something, or you should have had this, or you should have been making more money, or you should have moved, or you should have done this, because they themselves are in denial. And I don't think it's ego. I just want to really just tell it like it is. In some aspects, they see themselves as equivalent to their male counterparts, but their male counterparts don't see them as the same, especially their white male counterparts. And whomever is white adjacent, such as, the Indian people that are going to be in Trump's cabinet, the tokens. When it's convenient, they're just going to put in people that go along with the agenda. And they'll call them Trump advocates or loyalists or whatever, but we all know the deal. I just believe that it's just going to continue being a system of denial. And you wonder how Hitler got in office. People denied it. This wasn't just a sudden come up, you know what I mean? It happened subtly. And I want people to understand they need to stop denying things and work together. The Black women that are moving abroad are trying to work together to come up with solutions, because the majority, regardless of if we have children or not, of Black women are single. We're single because we didn't think patriarchy worked for us. And this is a problem when addressing racism specifically, because Black women are expected to ignore their own problems. And I, for one, am quite sick of it. I'm sick of being pushed to the bottom of the barrel within a crabs in a barrel mentality by Black folk. Everyone's trying to get to the top. Everyone's using everyone else. And we need to stop and say, we are not all the same. Some of us recognize what's going on here. And we need to put skin in the game. There's no one serious out there that's out here saying it like it is. This has been happening on a slow downward spiral for a very long time. And now it's just at the peak, right before we go over the waterfall. It's ridiculous. You should have an advocate in your corner. And again, I don't expect for the NAACP to stand up for this. Someone should be saying these housing prices are squeezing the most vulnerable. Someone should be saying that the inflation is hitting African American people, and in particular women and children, the hardest. They should not be living in their cars. If you want to be a nomad and live in your car, hey, I think that's a great lifestyle, because I would say F rent too. I don't blame you, because they don't deserve us to be paying rent, to be treated badly. You should not be living amongst poverty and bugs and paying $1,000 a month for rent or more. At this point, you're basically being taken advantage of and taken to the cleaners. This is the squeeze, as I said before. Well, like, what choice do you have? And it's time for you to start understanding that you're never going to have a choice until you make a choice for yourself by saying it like it is and stopping the embarrassment about what's happening here. We are not white women. We are not rich white women. They did not treat us as the equivalent. That doesn't mean that we're not better than some of them. I'm not saying that, or better than some of these elites in general. That's not what I'm saying, not by a long shot. Please don't think that I'm saying that. I mean, that's humorous. It's obvious that the top is the bottom and the bottom is the top. But what I'm saying is you're starting to drink the Kool-Aid and believe that what they're saying is, well, maybe it's true. Maybe I deserved all this. Maybe I did it. Maybe blah, blah, blah. Because I should have the same money as them. Why isn't my money stretching farther? Please. We have to work together. And from what I've seen, the Black women that are trying to work together are thinking about, what are we going to do next? How can we join together? What can we do? This is what we need to do. Because the bottom line is the future is here. And the African American women are not all right. If you want to look at the larger context within how racism has affected Black women mentally, the internalized oppression, whether they be in other countries or not, the Black women are not all right. This is problematic. And I've seen no solidarity other than these people who are trying to move abroad, who are trying to think about the future. And that's the least amount we can do is to try to help one another. We need to be helping one another in the states organize and to do things to help one another and stop feeling as if we should be ashamed because things are affecting us more negatively than what they're impacting other folks. Because it's going to trickle down. And this is unfortunate because we feel like we don't have a right to say anything, at least some of us, because our voices won't be heard. I guess your voice won't be heard if you never say anything. Say something and be heard. You have every right, just the same as everyone else. No one has the right to push you down and make you feel lesser than someone else. And I don't care what amount of bigotry, racism, sexism that they put upon you. You have rights. You are a human being. You remember when Martin Luther King was protesting in this I am a man and all the signs they used to wear? Well, I always used to think this is about Black male pride, but where are the women? Where were the signs saying I'm a real woman? I'm not a white woman. I'm a real woman and I'm a Black woman, or something to that effect. Because we were never recognized. It was about his pride. And I get that. He has a right to have pride, but what about the Black women? You saw us in Driving Miss Daisy, or I don't know, that was Morgan Freeman, but you know what I'm saying? All those Maid movies and stuff like that. Come on. Come on, where were we? And where are we now? Use your voices. It's like my son who has autism when he was little and he was going to occupational therapy. Use your words because he couldn't get speech out. He had very limited speech when he was younger. Use your words. Tell people that you are real people. You have real feelings. We are not robots. And we want real solutions specifically for African American women. And don't be walked over. This is not about if you're married and offending your man. This is about African American women's rights in general. Get it together. We are not each other's enemies. We are each other's sisters, just as Audre Lorde said. Get it together. I am your keeper. Right? So with that said, I'm about to get out of here. This is the end of the Wayward Blackwomen podcast. My name is Alicia Gray. Once again, I'm out. Thank you guys for listening to another podcast episode, and I will talk to you guys again next week. All right. Have a great rest of your day. I'm out. Bye.